All right, everybody, we are back again for another episode of the Coach's Compass. Again, season 2. Don't know what episode it is because we just continue to roll, continue to bring on cool guests from all across the world. It's your boy, Coach Coop, again, reporting live from USFA. Right, my boy, Coach J, can't be with us tonight just because he's got some things that we're dealing with, and also the time difference, right? Still trying to keep up with all that stuff. But remember, hit that like, subscribe, comment button down below so we continue to have this thing grow, continue to bring on cool guests from all over the world. We got our boy, Coach CD, with us here tonight. He is a head strength and conditioning coach for Mercer men's basketball. He's also an online coach and consultant. Coach, thank you and welcome to the Coach's Compass.
I definitely appreciate you having me on. I know we've been going back and forth for a little while trying to organize this, so it's good to be up here.
Yeah, finally caught up with some of your time, but hey, that's how it is, man. The strength and conditioning world, the schedules go crazy. You know, like especially you're getting ready to go into your basketball season now. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like then. So I'm glad we caught you beforehand.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, Coach, what got you into this field? What brought you into strength and conditioning? What got your interest? Like, why this side of the world?
Honestly, I think I got into S&C more so because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I always loved lifting weights, though. My first memories lifting weights are going down to the basement. We had a little weight set in our basement. My dad teaching me how to bench press and do like some of your basic dumbbell movements. So we had a couple pieces of equipment down there, and that's really where I fell in love with the gym. I would go train with my old wrestling coach, and then I got on the YouTube, the YouTube dark hole back from, man, that was probably the early 2000s at that time, like 2007, 12-ish, when all the bodybuilding YouTube type stuff was real big. So went down that rabbit hole for a while. Thought I was going to be a competitive bodybuilder for a bit. Realized I didn't want to do that. Got into college and I kind of studied a lot of different things in the science realm. I was pre-PT for a while. I was a bio major, a chemistry major, a biochemistry major. I was pre-PA, pre-chiro. I kind of did everything, but it was all generally related to like biology, chemistry, kind of the anatomy type of fields. I always really enjoyed my anatomy classes, thought the science stuff was really interesting, but really didn't know what I wanted to do because I shadowed all those professions and none of them really spoke to me. So I kind of reached a point where I was like, man, I'm kind of just wasting my time here. I don't really know what to do. And then my mom actually is the one who found the exercise science major at our university. So then I ended up getting in contact with the strength coach there, talked to him, kind of figured out what it was like. So I had my personal training cert. So I was training some people on the side anyways. And I knew I liked to lift. So I kind of found out like, oh man, I can get paid to, instead of just train like average Joes at the Gold's Gym downtown, I can go get this degree and then I can get paid to train high level athletes. Like, sign me up. And ever since then, I've been at, I think this is my 6th Division I school that I've been at, between being an unpaid intern, a GA, full-time staff member, and then I've been with the D3 school I got my degree from, which puts out an absurd amount of strength coaches, and then 2 private facilities back where I'm from in like Milwaukee area of Wisconsin. So as soon as I got bit by the bug, I dove all in.
That man, hey, the navigation is crazy, but you did talk about saying that you could get paid for doing something that you loved. But we all know when we first started in the strength and conditioning world, there's a lot of jobs you got to take that are unpaid. Like you said, you had the unpaid internship. What was it like though when you realized that there's a little bit more of the ladder that you got to climb before you actually do get those paid positions?
It sounds weird to say now, because like now where I'm at in life, like just got engaged, thinking of starting a family soon. Like now some of that, the money stuff does matter a lot more. But early on, it wasn't even really something I was phased by. When I was an intern and a GA, I kind of just knew what it was. Like I was very fortunate that I had a lot of good mentors that were very honest with me early on about what the process was going to look like. So going into it, I knew you were going to work unpaid for more than likely a year. I knew going into a graduate assistant that it was going to be pretty much the way I was going to get paid was getting my master's degree paid for.
Yeah.
And whatever stipend on top of that was just kind of bonus. And like I just kind of embraced it that those few years I was just not really going to be bringing in a lot of money. And it was just kind of my time to figure it all out, grind, build up a ton of connections, and do things that are going to set me up for getting those full-time jobs down the line. And then even like those first, like the first time you get that check that's more than 800 to like my GA stipend was like $1,000 a month. The first time you get a check that's even a little bit bigger than that, I made
I
it.
made it. I did it.
I was like, yes, I'm making money now. And then all of a sudden you realize, man, it's not that money doesn't go, it goes a little bit further because you're still living that like GA intern lifestyle where you spend so much time in the building. And fortunately for me, that first full-time job was I guess technically I was hired full-time at Georgia, but I stayed there for a very short time, full-time, before I took my job in Wyoming. But like Wyoming, no state income tax. Laramie is extremely cheap to live in. Like cost of living, cost of goods out there is not very high. So making less of a salary was a little bit easier to put stuff away, but a raise is far and few. they're far and in between, and they don't tend to trickle down a whole lot
Yeah.
through the staff. So, that's really the biggest reason why I started finally getting online and put myself out there and try to build that online business was to just have another source, another way to bring in some of that extra income on top of what I'm making.
Yeah. I mean, you do talk about that online platform. What was it like now? I mean, you're at your sixth stop, right? What was it like, though you've worked with multiple different sports, I'm guessing, along the way? Now you're specifically at men's basketball, and then you're also trying to build up your online platform. What was it like to have to learn all these, how to work with different styles of athletes, and now being with only basketball, and then on top of that, building up your own online platform?
Yeah, the working with different athletes, it wasn't a big transition for me, more so because I think because my undergrad, when I started interning, so I went to UW, University of Wisconsin Lacrosse. It's a D3 program right on the Mississippi up by the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And when I started interning there, I worked with all of our varsity sports, like right off the bat. So my very first, and I guess even before that, I started interning at a private facility. So my very first experience in actual strength and conditioning, not just personal training people one-on-one, more body composition type of goals, was working with a wide variety of athletes and a wide variety of ages. So like we had at that private facility, it was youth athletes all the way through professionals. And we even had some like elderly population that still was active, like playing tennis or playing badminton, things like that, that had performance related goals that were a little bit different than just kind of your general, just want to be healthy as I age. So getting those exposures early on, and then even at the school I went to when I started interning there, working with all those different sports, and we had a bunch of different teams too: track, gymnastics, football, baseball, basketballs, wrestling. There were a lot of exposure there, and then even from there, I went to another private facility where you've got the same setup, where it's the youth programs, you've got your kind of mid youth, that like middle school age, you've got your high school groups, you've got your college kids, you've got your pro groups, you've got your mom and dad groups. So I got that exposure early on before I ever took my first internship at a Division 1, like bigger Division 1 football program. So moving through those, getting that exposure early on really helped me to realize that training the athletes, you're looking for a lot of very similar things from our lens. Like our lens as a strength coach, strength and conditioning coach, performance coach, whatever you want to call it. From our lens, you are really across all sports trying to build a more powerful, more explosive, stronger, faster, more agile athlete. And that stuff transfers from football to basketball to soccer to wrestling to gymnastics, all of this stuff. And really I think the difference more so comes in the dose of certain things.
Mhm.
Like, and it's very context dependent too, depending on what your team needs, what individuals on your team need. Like for me right now, my guys don't need to put on a ton of weight. Like it's
It's
not
just,
like
I mean, hoopers. I mean,
yeah, like it was a lot of body composition changes. We had a few guys that we wanted to add a couple pounds to. We got a few guys that we wanted to lose a little bit of weight, but all in all, it's not just that gain mentality, kind of like you would see with football, where a lot of times you are looking to put some weight, unless you're at one of those big Power Five programs that your recruits come in and they're already at their playing weight. They're already very well developed, really mostly because of their genetics, because the training age of a lot of these athletes is not as high as I think a lot of coaches would like it to be. But that's another another topic we can dive into. But yeah, I think when you start looking at it through our lens of what we're really trying to do and where we can really make an impact on winning and make an impact on how well our athletes excel at their sport, you see a lot of the same things come up. And then it's really just figuring out how to dose it appropriately for the athlete so that it transfers better to what they're going to need to be doing in their sport.
what are you seeing though? I mean, you've been to multiple different places, Power Fives. Right now, you're at where you're at now. What have you seen has been kind of a gap that's been missing for when athletes come in from the high school level, or even guys that are transferring in from other places? What do you see as kind of a gap that athletes are missing? And you talked about training age, but like just in their overall athleticism and stuff that you're trying to help minimize the gap.
The biggest thing that I notice is just a general lack of training and a general lack of knowledge around training. You think a lot of these kids would come in and have a bigger base level of our stuff than they do. A majority of the time, the freshmen that I see are people that have just come out of a high school where either their sport coach ran the weight room, a gym teacher ran the weight room, or they were just doing stuff with mom or dad in the garage, or they were just kind of going to Gold's Gym and looking at whatever YouTube page or whatever their favorite like fitness influencer was doing. Not anything necessarily sports specific, but just that general lack of training. They tend to come in and they've been playing their sport for a really long time, or they've been playing multiple sports for a long time, but they haven't gone through a well thought out, well organized training program. So a lot of times when they get in, it's their first introduction to real training. So that's where I think a lot of coaches tend to go off the rails a little bit, because it looks cool on social media and it's fun to talk about all these advanced training principles and these different things that you can do to squeeze out, that are really generally used to squeeze out that extra 1 to 2% for a really high level athlete that's topped out. But that's not what these kids need. Even a 4-year guy that goes, like, let's say in today's landscape, it's not as common, but let's say you have somebody on your team that is with you for 4 years. Sure, your program should shift and change for them a little bit just because of their training age increasing. The things that make them great might need to shift in a little different way as they age, as they go through the program, as their sport takes a toll on their body. But you're still looking at somebody that may legitimately only have 4 years of being in a well thought out, well planned out program. So tapping into some of that extra stuff, once you apply that stimulus, it's never going to hit the same again. So you're exposing them to some things that you probably don't need to, and you probably would have got just a better general adaptation anyways from dumbing it down, keeping it a little more simple, and just following the process and not rushing to get to cool stuff just because it's more fun for you to kind of talk to other people about what you're doing with your program. So like I think that's really the biggest thing and I think the biggest difference between those Power 5 schools and like smaller Division 1 programs, even going to the D2, D3 level, is more so the genetic freaks that you get. Like, you're just going to get
Yeah.
kids that they're just getting better overall athletes at those higher levels. So it's not necessarily that they're more well trained. It's just that they're just legitimately better athletes. They pick up on things faster. They respond to training better. And that's, I think, the biggest difference there between the different levels. So I think number one, you got to recognize where you are and what kind of genetics the kids that you are getting come in with. And number two, you got to just recognize that a lot of times these kids are coming into your program knowing nothing and having trained zero. So uh, I know personally that's caused me to really pull back on some of my programming stuff initially when I take over a team, caused me to really pull back and focus on really keeping the main things early on, and then understanding where I would like to go in the next 2, 3, 4 years with the program, and doing stuff in the moment to set that stuff up down the line.
For sure. No, I mean, it makes perfect sense. It kind of fits along the lines of how we've looked at your social media and learned a lot of things from what you're doing. Because if you look
Mhm.
at yours, you're not fitting the fads, right? You're not trying to do what is, I would say, cool, right? You're just doing what is needed.
Mhm.
How have you used your platform, to kind of continue to educate not only just the athletes that you're working with and athletes that are on Instagram, but also coaches to show them that, hey, you don't have to always do what's like deemed as cool or for clickbait or whatever it may be, but like showing them how to do, keep the main thing the main thing.
I almost wish I did more clickbaity stuff. My page would probably blow up a lot faster, but
And we found you, so
yeah, you might see something crazy coming up. But I think the biggest thing is, honestly, I just film all my anytime I work out. I pretty much always just film it now, just because I'm like, you never know when an idea is gonna come, something you can talk about. Even if I just need a clip one day, I'm like, man, let me go back and let me take this clip of me bench
yeah,
pressing. It will
yeah,
go well with this message that I'm about to try to put out. But really, I just started putting out my thoughts on what good training was and putting out visuals on what I thought good training looked like, and just double down on it. Cause I know a lot of and I'm sure people will, maybe they don't notice this, but a lot of times when you look at my stuff, you'll see it's the same. I'm posting very similar clips week to week to week to
yeah.
week to week. It's the stuff I'm doing doesn't necessarily change. The structure doesn't necessarily change that much. I'll sub in some different exercise variations. I may change the structure of the week a little bit, but pretty much always it looks like a very similar structure. And then week to week, it's the same clips of the same exercises. It's just progressively either technique is improving, speed of movement is improving, or load on the bar is improving over time. And then all of a sudden it switches. Like, I think that's just I I wouldn't say there's anything wholly calculated about the way that I approach trying to get that message across. It's more just, this is what I'm doing every day because I know it works. And these are my thoughts on why I'm doing what I'm doing, and see if that stuff can help resonate with somebody, teach them, maybe give them a new perspective, maybe confirm to them that they're on the right track, or just really just doubles down. Like, if you want to be more athletic and you want to be better at your sport, you should be sprinting, you should be doing plyometrics, you should be changing direction, you should be lifting weights fast, light weights fast, you should be lifting heavy weights that force you to move slow. And if you're doing that, you're hitting all your boxes. And you can have plenty of variation within that kind of template to keep things fresh, to keep things engaging, but you're still doing the same stuff. Like, I may do a 2-point start for a sprint one week. I may do a falling start the next week. I may do a 3-point start the next week, or I may run this start variation for 3 weeks and then this start variation and then this start variation, or I'm doing this type of squat as my lower strength and then I move to this squat. You're doing the same stuff. You're just changing something slightly about the movement that manipulates the velocity or the load, but the effort still stays there and you can still keep the same general structure. and you're going to just see results over time because that's just how it works.
I mean, you make it sound simple, Coach, right? But we, you know what I mean? Like, but you got a lot of people
Yeah.
that are out there that are trying to push, all of these different types of agendas, right? Like,
Mhm.
but not really showing how to get to that point. Like everyone shows like the very highly advanced movements that they're doing, and not really showing like the timeline of what it takes to get there. Or even telling the athletes like, hey, like there's a progression to get there, what the drill stacking was to use to get to that point. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
athletes are getting lost in the sauce of, hey, I need to be able to do this right away. But I love what you're
Mhm.
doing on your social media page by showing people just, hey, it's literally the same thing. Like I've been
Yeah.
following it now for weeks and just seeing,
Yeah.
but it's the same clip. It's just added a couple of more things in there, or maybe it
Yeah.
just looks a little bit faster.
Yeah.
But it's simple. But that's what's been effective, right? And that's what works for a lot of different athletes.
Mhm.
I think that's where a lot of people get a little lost when it comes to the social media stuff. Because like you said, sometimes like, hey, maybe I should just post some clickbait so I can get some more likes and some
Yeah.
more comments and more people to follow. And
Yeah, and
that's the
it's
hard
simple
part
to
about
see.
our industry.
Yeah, and you gotta like the other thing too is you can't just take a post at face value either. You have to think about the context behind it. 'Cause a lot of times you'll see people post things that sound really good and probably are really good for their context. Doesn't necessarily apply to yours. Like a lot of the stuff that a lot of those I don't even know that I don't know that even anything is necessarily that high level that we do. I don't know if there's anything really that complex that would necessarily be dubbed a extremely high level, really difficult thing for somebody to grasp, like as far as like technical, tactical type of stuff goes. But you just have to take that stuff into account, the context and the lens that the person is speaking with, because that stuff does look cool, but if it doesn't apply to your situation, it doesn't apply. And that's where even some of the things I may point out, I may disagree with the stance or I may come across as a little bit combative about something, but ultimately it just doesn't work for my scenario. And the post that I'm putting out is speaking more to people that are in my same scenario. And that's why it would resonate more well with them. But I can see how somebody else might see the same thing and they're like, well, that doesn't make sense because I have a one-on-one person that I work with for an hour and a half 5 days a week, so I can do X, Y, and Z other things with them. And I'm like, all right, cool, I don't have that.
Yeah.
I've got 14 dudes that some days we train as a whole team and other days we train in a split group, so that doesn't apply to me. But you've got to be able to filter that stuff out. That's why I tell people, take social media with a with a with an open mind going into a lot of that stuff, because there is so much good information out there now. Feel like every day I see more and more good coaches getting on there and starting to throw information out there and throw things up that's really good stuff. It's just being able to read it with the thought of the lens that the person is putting it out from, so that you can actually decipher what they're talking about and see if you can apply it to your situation.
Feel that. So, Coach, last thing before we get out of here, what's something you'd want us to ask our next guest?
Oh, something to ask the next guest. This is a good one. I always think that it's interesting hearing people's perspective, coaching and programming for the athletes that they work with, as far as like what their setting is. So like, let's say you've got a collegiate strength coach on next. It's interesting for me to hear what's their long-term athletic development model. What's their approach when they get a freshman class in? How are they introducing them to training? When they go to a new organization, what's step 1, 2, 3 for them to establish rapport, build respect with their team, implement the training system that they want to implement, and phase them into that stuff. I always find those conversations interesting because it gives a lot of good practical advice that you can just kind of exit with and use it immediately.
Sure. I don't know who our next guest is, but I'm going to use this question next time we jump on with them. So, Coach,
Do it
I
up.
appreciate you jumping on today. I appreciate you dropping some knowledge, right? And sharing, everything you got going on and how you got to where you're at now. So everyone that's out there, hey, it's super simple. Like he said, right? You just got to do the basics. keep the main thing the main thing. But if you got a chance to coach out, check Coach CD, check him out for everything he's doing. And Coach, thank you again for being here today.
Yeah, no, definitely appreciate you having me on.